how to use a gradient as a great source for designs in Photoshop. Well, you can use them in thousands of different ways. I'm just going to show you an example how you can use gradients with selections and then use them as a pattern design. So first thing to do, go over here to the gradient tool. Now I'm going to use a very basic gradient on the rainbow gradients, and you should be able to find that in your gradients panel. If you can't, it's possible that you haven't got, so just go down here to Window and Gradients. Now with gradients, you've got an option, there it is over there. So it might appear, but no, it's over that side. Just go down here. You've got various options, and you'll notice at the bottom there's a legacy gradients, and you should be able to find a rainbow gradient in there. So just select that, and then what will happen, it will add a legacy gradient section. You can find that down here. So legacy gradients, you can see a whole range of different designs. So I'm just using one of those. So now with that gradient, move the panel out of the way. I don't want that, it's in the way there. And then go to the gradient tool, and I'm using difference. So I'm just going to apply, and I'm using a radial. Don't have to use radial, you could use linear, etc. So just simply by applying this. But what I want is a very small structure. That's why I go for the radial, and also with multiple stops. So it creates nice little these sort of round designs there, and you can apply it a number of times. And once you're happy with your design, what you can do, you can simply go over here to the various selection tools and elliptical marquee tool. I'm just going to use that. And I'm just going to select part. Now I could select there. Actually, that looks quite a nice design as well. So I could just select that. There's a whole variety of different designs that you could use as a source. I'm just going to go with that one. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a bit of feathering into it. So select menu and then go to modify and feather. And I'm going to go for something like 20 pixels. So 20 pixels, and then I'm going to do, just going to go obviously edit and copy. I could just use Control C, etc. Edit and copy, and then I'm going to paste it. Deselect and then paste. So you've got your design there. You can see it's got a slight blur because of the feathering. So you've got that. What you can now do, you can warp it. You can distort it. You can simply just warp it by just dragging it up that way. But you can maybe use some of the edit and transform and distort and warp. Use that, or maybe use liquefy via the filter menu. I'm just going to go with that. So I'm just going to go with the warp. Now I could also, before I've done all that, I could actually just go into layer and smart objects and convert to smart object, and then you can reuse it later. But it's going to be a destructive event. So I'm going to just warp this slightly because I want a flame-like design. Just going to extend that, and you can really extend it quite nicely. It obviously becomes slightly smeary, but that's what I want. I want the smear effect, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to use it as a source for pattern. Now, don't go over the edge. Don't want to go over the edge, because then you end up with a sort of sharp cutting point at that point. So we've got the design there. Press return. Now I can move this around. I can just use that, and what I'm also going to do, I'm just going to add a bit more of a, just go to layer style and bevel. Just give it a bit of 3D as well. And it's still got that blurriness because of the feathering. So depth and size, I can just change that, tweak that. Click OK. And also, maybe I'll actually add a shadow as well. So layer style and drop shadow this time. So you just add, again, avoid going over the edge. You don't want sharp cutting, so be mindful of that. So don't make it go off like over this point. Change the size, multiply it, just make a nice little dark there. Click OK. Now, don't want the background, so I'm just going to deselect that at this point. Go to the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to define that as a pattern. So I've got my selection around the whole. If you want to, of course, you could duplicate this layer. So I could have gone here to layer and just with that layer selected, I could have done Alt or Option key and dragged and duplicated the design and created multiple copies of it. Or I could, of course, selected different parts of the original image and then built up quite a complex set of different designs. But I'm just going to go with this. So with this selected, go to Edit and Define Pattern. Let's give it a name, obviously Pattern 7, and now it's defined. Well, I can bring the other one back now, but I'm going to remove this now. So I'm just going to delete that there, and I'm just going to delete yes, I don't want it anymore. I'm going to keep the background, there's nothing wrong with that. What I can now do, of course, I can go to the Edit, and I can go to Fill, go with the Pattern option. So there's Pattern option there, you can see a little tick against it, and select now, that's one I created earlier, but to select that one, that's the one I've just created, so you've got this one there, and make certain the script is on. Now sometimes I've noticed that if the script is on and you still run it, sometimes it just doesn't work. So I always like to reselect it to make certain it is definitely selected. And I'm going to go with a random fill. Could go with some of the others, and I will show those as well. So once you've done that, click OK. Now it takes a few seconds, depends on the document, size of document. And I would suggest get something go like 8.2 or 10 for the density. Set the scale so there's some variation in the size. So you get some small ones, and you get obviously all the way up to 1, which of course is the actual original size. There's no change, I'm not adding anything. Also I've got rotate patterns, and I've got a bit of subtle change in the colour. Now you could of course push it up, change brightness, randomness if you want. You can see the design there, perfectly reasonable. And then click OK. And you can see the design. Now, weirdly, it doesn't fill the entire, you'd think when it's like set to 10 or 8, it would virtually fill the entire thing. It doesn't. The image, the preview that you see in the random fill doesn't always match the end result. So you can always, of course, go to Edit and Fill and click and apply it again. Now, sometimes, which I should have done maybe, the script, set that on and off again, then back to on, because sometimes what happens, it suddenly goes to, I'm going to ignore it, but this time it did actually apply it. So you can see, again, you got your design. So you can create all kinds of very abstract backgrounds, very simply by using a gradient. Now, of course, you've got this one, this is random fill, but you can always use Edit and Fill. Now, I've always felt it was a pity, because you got over here, you got, when you've obviously applied a filter, say you apply this oil paint, you can reapply it. However, there's no edit there with apply the fill again. I mean, it just seems to be a weird thing. I do not know why there is no re-edit, reapply the fill, especially with patterns, because you would often think, well, I would like to reapply it because it randomizes it and fills it in different areas. So edit and fill, and you can, of course, select that one, but I've got another ones, or I could use those. I've got a script on random fill. I could use spiral, I could use crossweave, but I'm going to go for symmetry fill. Symmetry fill is a really good one as well. So click OK, and you've got symmetry fill. And you've got a variety of different symmetry types. Really good. I quite like number 7. That's always a favourite of mine. Now, sometimes it's probably best to apply this on a layer. So before you go into this, because you can't unfortunately do this within the actual symmetry fill panel, be really nice. That's the one thing along with lots of things with Photoshop, I would love to see. There should be sort of panels that you can access even at this point and add a new layer. Why do you have to, if you go say to window, you can't access the layers, you can't go over here and select any layers, you can only work with this modal dialog. However, that's the way it is. So you have to do the work beforehand. So if you want a layer, go to layer and new layer and then apply this. And it will appear then on that layer. Now you can modify the pattern scale, make it bigger. It'll probably go over the edge, even though in this preview it doesn't, but it might do. You can also change the width. In that case, creates a whole range of variety of different designs for you. Unfortunately, you can't also, another thing you can't do, you can't now change the pattern. Say if you decide you want to use a different pattern, well, you have to cancel. Also, you can't use multiple patterns, which would be nice as well. Colour randomness. So you can add a bit of colour randomness to it as well, and you can modify the height as well. You can create some really beautiful designs there. Click OK. And you can see the design there. And that's all from a very basic gradient, simply using a gradient with light difference, and you can create very colourful designs which you can then select or part of it. You don't have to use the whole gradient, use part of it to create something like that. Well, I hope you found this tutorial of interest. Please subscribe to Graphic X channel, always adding new tutorials about Photoshop, Illustrator, Affinity Photo, Painter and many, many others. Also, please add some comments. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? Always nice to hear. Also, if there's something you would like me to show, it's possible that there's things as patterns, etc., that maybe I haven't explored, and you might think, well, that would be really nice to find out more about. So let me know, please. Also, a dislike or like. Thank you much.